Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And what you're seeing on the screen is that I am frozen,
Uh,
but you're seeing also that I'm being joined by D. Piers, the host of Around the World with D and Friends, and my good friend. And she is here to help me out and back
yes.
me up. And so I think the first thing we're going to do is that I'm going to refresh the screen here. So I'll be gone for a minute, D,
Okay.
and then I'll come back and hopefully I'm frozen.
Okay. You fixed it from the very beginning. Joe will be right back in. He was frozen, so he's working on unfreezing the screen. And right now I'm sharing. Uh, Hello, Steve Wolfbrand. Good to see you. Joe's will be right back in. He was frozen, so he wanted to get it fixed right from the beginning.
Okay,
Here.
here I am. I'm not frozen anymore, but I'm all wavering. Steve Wolfbrand is here. Hello, Steve. How are you doing? Very nice to see you. And I guess we'll start in our usual way by sharing on Facebook. I should say this is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and Dee Pierce, my good friend, has joined me for the show, and she's the host of Around the World with Two Friends.
Yes, I'm happy to be here and sharing the show out, letting everybody know Joe's live. Come join.
And our topics for tonight are the
Mm,
BRICS War #2, and the reason why it's #2 is because we went over some of the BRICS War in the last stream on Sunday, and we're going to continue with that stream today and go through it because the topic is very, very important, and there's a lot more to learn about it.
Definitely.
Next topic is nuclear roulette, and that's a framing that's given to the current situation between the United States and Russia by Scott Ritter. And we'll be going over a video that Scott Ritter had with Nima, I believe on Monday morning. Well, maybe it was this morning, I forget. Anyway, we'll also be going over a piece by Pepe Escobar on the ASEAN conflict
Okay.
between Thailand and Cambodia. Uh, and then there's a new article by Joe Stiglitz out about the brave stance of the Brazilians against Mr. Trump. And that's, I'm sure, going to be very interesting to many people because the Brazilians are making a brave stand and there are a lot of implications to it. And we'll
Hmm.
be talking about that. And then finally, there's a blog post from Larry Johnson about what happens after the 12 days of the 12-day ultimatum are up. In other words, Trump shifted his 50-day ultimatum, compressed it to a 12-day ultimatum because I think he was afraid the Ukrainians weren't going to be here in 50 days.
Mm.
He shifted it to a 12-day ultimatum. And Larry Johnson asked the important question, what happens after the 12 days? So those are things we'll be going to hear. So please like, share, and subscribe. There's Wayne Santelman has joined. He says, "Hi, Joe D. Houthis have just fired a ballistic missile at central Israel. Well, I
Mm.
think the ballistic missile hit without any problem. Is that right?" Steve Wolfbrand signs in from Facebook. Oh, last stream on Sunday, we had a very interesting It was an interesting time. It wasn't a good time. But what happened is we were streaming on Twitter and we were streaming uh, on YouTube, but we couldn't get the stream on Facebook. There was some kind of glitch, which is not here tonight, thankfully. So Wayne is coming in from Facebook.
Good to see you, Wayne.
Yeah, very good to see you, Wayne. And Steve is coming in both on YouTube and on Facebook. It's good to see you on both.
Oh, that's good.
Steve. So, and then we have some people who are undoubtedly here from Twitter because we can't see them yet. So,
right.
But we're going to start off here with the second part of a video we started on Sunday. And that is a video from Danny Haifong as the host and Pepe Escobar as the guest. And it's mostly about the BRICS conference and the war against the BRICS started by Mr. Trump. So we'll share the screen for that video now, and we'll do the usual playing of the video and commenting and analyzing and giving our own opinions as we move through it. So we'll share the screen right now. And there we are. Accept that we shared? No.
No, not yet.
Not yet. That's because I did this the wrong way. That's me. I need a producer for sure. Because I am much less competent at the producing thing than I should be. So here we are. We're starting this video off where we left it on Sunday night. So here we go.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, Pepe. And
hey, stop playing with your fanny pack. You need the bearskin tactical hoodie.
Many people are surmising, Pepe, that Trump's foreign policy is in large part being driven by more established members of this ruling class, like Lindsey Graham, for example. And he was recently on Fox News, and he outlined what basically what you wrote about in your recent article on this three-front war on BRICS. Here is Lindsey Graham's diatribe that spells this out.
To recreate the former Soviet Union, the Russian Empire. He wants to take countries that are not his. In the mid-90s, Ukraine gave up 1,700 nuclear weapons with a promise that their sovereignty would be respected by Russia. Putin broke that promise. He's not going to stop until somebody makes him stop. So Trump has been tough on Iran, who is incredibly dangerous, but they're in a weakened state. And Putin, your turn is coming. You know, Donald Trump is the Scotty Scheffler of American politics and foreign diplomacy, and he's about to put a whooping on your ass. What's going to happen here is that Trump is going to impose tariffs on people that buy Russian oil. China, India, and Brazil, those three countries buy about 80% of cheap Russian oil. That's what keeps Putin's war machine going. So President Trump's going to put 100% tariff on all those countries, punishing them for helping Putin.
So, Pepe, this is the outline, essentially, of this war on BRICS. So maybe you can correct the record here, because that is how Lindsey Graham, that's how a lot of establishment looks at their war on BRICS. But how would you explain to the audience exactly what this is all about?
Danny, I did this in another podcast, so I'll try to come up with something different for your podcast. First of all, this imbecile is not ruling class. He's paid by the ruling class. It's different. So he mouthed off what the ruling class tells him to do. Number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, this imbecile thinks that Brazil exports oil to the U.S. Well, I'll rest my case. It's total imbecility. has no clue what he's talking about. And number two, Putin's empire. Come on, read some history.
Okay, I think Pepe has, for the moment, lost his handle on the vocabulary of the English language. Seems to be focused completely on the notion of imbeciles. Ability. So let us go on and see where this carries us.
Read the history of what's happening in Donbass since 2014 or even before. So it's pointless to give time and for imbeciles like that. You know, we're wasting our time. But that's the problem. And once again, I have to repeat that because this idiot is an American senator and he speaks English. Everything that he speaks gets international promotion and he goes in every bloody channel on the planet. If he was from Somalia or from Nigeria, this will never happen. So he's always lying and he's always mouthing off stupidity. So that's it. Don't take him into consideration. First of all, because he's irrelevant.
And in your article, Pepe, you do talk about the RIC and how this war on BRICS that the ruling classes are actually waging has these components to it, these three components against the RIC. Talk about each one if you can. Could you lay out exactly what the landscape actually is? Because as you just noted, imbeciles like Lindsey Graham, they do a lot of obfuscating of the reality.
Well, you're being very diplomatic, Danny. Congratulations. I'm too old for this shit, so I'm not diplomatic anymore. Okay, RIC. Why I have been talking about RIC for months now, in fact. This is the original Primakov triangle, which was conceptualized by the late, great Russian foreign minister, Yevgeny Primakov, in the late 90s. When he qualified Russia, India, and China, RIC, as, let's say, the future of international relations, in fact. Nowadays, we can talk about a revamped Primakov triangle. The RIC would contain Iran and not India for an enormous number of reasons. First of all, because India, they still don't know exactly where they are. And something that I heard from some of the top Chinese academics in Rio, we had deep discussions day after day about BRICS. And some of them were saying, maybe we should start thinking in terms of the other two I's in BRICS. So BRICS, according to our Chinese friends, should take into consideration much more Iran and Indonesia instead of India. So this new Primakov triangle would be a Primakov quartet, in fact, with both Iran and Indonesia, and Russia and China.
The price is down. If you don't buy them now, they won't be available again at this price. These are eyeglasses you have never.
Many of them were coming back to the same point, that the trust between India and China is broken. And the only possibility is if Russia steps in as mediator inside BRICS, inside the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and inside multilateral organizations as a whole, to more or less get Xi and Modi on the same table so they can finally patch up. It's going to be very, very difficult. The only ones who can pull it off are the Russians. But considering what happened in Rio, where India, even with some restrictions, in the end, they were following what Russia, China, and Brazil were dictating in terms of the roadmap for BRICS from now on. And very important, India they are the chair of BRICS next year. Summit's going to be in India next year. So the big question from now on until, let's say, next October next year in India is how they are going to manage the fact that they are chair and the huge expectations and everything that was actually decided in terms of speeding up these BRICS, intra-BRICS interconnections for the next few months.
So Pepe is assuming that the BRICS conference will be in October next year,
Okay.
rather than in July as it just was this year. Okay, that's because generally the conferences have been in October, but the Brazilians moved up the time of having the conference this year. So Pepe is assuming that's not going to continue. I don't know if he's right about that.
India, they have a lot on their plate and some serious decisions to make. Meanwhile, Iran and Indonesia, they are getting their place at the...
I think what he's talking about there is, I think India has had one foot inside of the BRICS, okay, and put out, in spite of the fact that they are, among the 5 original members, okay. Okay, but they have always wanted to continue to play with the United States and be very committed to the United States, while also being a part of BRICS. Now, it falls to them, next year to continue the momentum of BRICS into the future. And that momentum is now very considerable, because in the last years, South Africa and then Russia and now Brazil have strengthened the movement of BRICS considerably. All have had very successful conferences. So the question is whether India will work hard with the shippers of its choice to make a similar contribution next year. To do that, they're going to have to will have to become, I think, a lot more committed to BRICS than they've been. That would be an important foreign policy development if it happens.
BRICS table is more and more solidified. The final declaration in Rio totally supported Iran in terms of the attack by Israel and by the US. This was a consensus, and the language was unmistakable. It might have been stronger, but the Brazilians were arguing with the Iranians. It cannot be too strong, because then all red alerts will start popping up in DC. So they found a solution, and the Iranians agreed in the end. And when Arakchi, the Iranian foreign minister, when he intervened at the table, when they were all at the table, the first day of the meeting, Arakchi's condemnation was really, really hardcore, much more hardcore than and everybody understood why, and everybody understood why he was doing it at the table. It's on the record now.
I serve my country, and now I carry legally everywhere I go. Here's how. National Concealed Carry.
Very, very important. But the RIC, the New Primakov Triangle or Quartet with Iran and Indonesia, they are leading BRICS now, from now on. And in terms of diversifying the world economy, in terms of trade in their own currencies, and in terms of very close interconnections, and considering the fact that they all have strategic relationships among themselves, not with Indonesia, but soon Indonesia will be part of it as well. It's very good for BRICS integration. Of course, the 2 or 3 IQs over room temperature in Washington are actually paying attention to that. That adds to their desperation, because every move on the hybrid war, hot war, trade war, tariff war against the BRICS only solidifies the BRICS even more. Mm-hmm. And solidifies them even to the point of finally this relatively dysfunctional organism, which is the NDB, the New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank, it's probably started to get its act together. I had long conversations in Rio with Paulo Nogueira Batista, the Brazilian economist, who's one of the co-founders of the NDB. So Paulo knows inside out how the NDB works and doesn't work, especially. And of course, he knows how to fix it. The problem is this has to go through the top BRICS partners, members, sorry, not partners, and also the countries who are partners of the NDB. For the moment, there are only 10. That's not enough. So you cannot have a global development bank with only 10 countries as members. So the NDB has to expand. And as the NDB expand, they have to reform from the inside, meaning reform their statutes, which are linked to the US dollar. So if you have a Global South Development Bank issuing loans for development projects across the Global South, this cannot be tied to the US dollar. It's plainly obvious. But that's there's the rub. You have to start upgrading the bank from the get-go, from the inside, practically from scratch.
So that point, okay, is very important. If you want to free yourself from the US dollar, and your development bank that's dealing with all of the Global South and doing things for the Global South cannot be lending money in the dollar. It's got to be using currencies of, BRICS members. So that has to change, and Pepe points it out here, because it's a very, very, very critical point.
But at least this process is ongoing already. So every time that I give an example to you, Danny, to all of you, I think you might be wondering, but it gets more and more complicated. Yes, it does. It does. But even as it gets more and more complicated in each node of the BRICS machine, you see that progress is ongoing in every area. And this is something that at least the expectations that we had before the summit in Rio, they were reversed, because we could see progress in every area, and especially these parallel areas: business, women's councils, civics, discussion about media, you name it. What the Chinese call the 5 BRICS pillars, which includes the famous Xi Jinping style peoples to peoples exchanges. And this is something we could see live in Rio, the pulse of the Global South and people exchanging ideas, projects. Okay, let's look for sources of financing here, there, etc. So that's where the role of the NDB tends to grow from now on. And it will depend a lot on President Dilma Rousseff's I would say political capital. She's highly admired by Xi Jinping and by Putin at the same time. So now this has to transfer into actual policies.
Okay, that's of course very critical. She's highly admired, though, also by the Brazilians. Obviously, she's Brazilian and a former president of that country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to keep that in mind. I bet she's highly admired by now by the Iranians too, but that is my projection.
But it's going to be tough. Very, very tough.
Yeah, and Pepe, I have a question for you. As you were talking, I was thinking about how when we look at Iran, China, and Russia, the real RIC or the new RIC, all three of them are sanctioned countries. Iran with some of the harshest sanctions given their geographic location. Russia with the most sanctions from the US and EU. And then, of course, China has sanctions on it in various sectors by the United States.
China is an immediate target of sanctions by the United States.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's ridiculous what Trump is contemplating doing. And the reason why it's ridiculous is because it's going to hurt the United States a lot more than China.
So how do these three countries, essentially sanctioned in significant ways, how do they lead this charge? How is it happening? Because as we played earlier with Lindsey Graham, despite his lies, his obfuscation, his messengering for the ruling classes, he is speaking to a fear, it seems like, and maybe even an underestimation of what these three countries have been able to accomplish despite all of the adversity and the aggression against them.
1980, when Magnum started. That was really...
The West, they cannot point these countries on a map. Sorry for being so undiplomatic, but it gets on your nerves sometimes. It doesn't matter. And this is something very important among these three. They stop paying attention to the US or whatever vociferation or threats or whatever coming to the US. The Russians are doing what they're doing. They will keep doing what they're doing on Ukraine and on the, let's say, road to de-dollarization front. China, as I saw when Trump unleashed the tariffs, and I was in Shanghai at the time, and I could sense, I could feel it, and I could see in front of my interlocutors talking to them, this renewed sense of self-confidence. They say, okay, you want war? Okay, we're ready for any war you want to bring it on. And the Brazilians, which now probably going to be, in a matter of a few days, probably they're going to start to be sanctioned again. Tariffs are sanctions. In fact, it's the only policy from DC. They are finding again a sense of national unity, which is something that had disappeared from Brazil, especially because Brazil is so polarized between Lula and what Lula represents, and Bolsonarismo, which is still very, very strong. And I had some crash course on how strong Bolsonarismo is still very, very powerful in Brazil. So the country is split. But now, with a foreign attack on Brazilian sovereignty, that's great. From the point of view of a country recovering its sovereignty, it's a gift. Trump has given Brazil a gift, in fact. So this is how you, as a BRICS nation on different levels, this is how you coordinate with the others. So soon we're going to have maybe 4 of the top BRICS under different kinds of sanctions and different kinds of hybrid, hot trade, tariff, geoeconomic, geopolitical war. And the others are learning, of course. And the partners are also learning. For instance, the Southeast Asians, which are a powerhouse in themselves, Indonesia as a full member, and Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand as partners. They are learning that sooner or later, the US can turn against them as well, especially when they know that their main trade partner is China for all ASEAN 10, and Russia has enormous soft power with ASEAN, and Russia is making inroads, geoeconomic inroads in ASEAN as well. So sooner or later, ASEAN is going to become a target. That's absolutely never. It's the kind of conversation that I have with my Thai friends when I am in Thailand. Same thing. So this interaction, Brazil, Southeast Asia, soon at the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, will be essential as well. They will be learning from each other. And the role of Indonesia, which Indonesia is like the Brazil of Southeast Asia, the largest economy, significant, strategic, etc.
Just emphasizing.
Brazil and Indonesia, they are getting closer and closer.
The population of Indonesia is larger than the Brazilian population. Indonesia has the 4th largest population in the world, behind the U.S. It's something like 240 million, something like that. But it's Brazil. I'm sorry. It's Indonesia, Pakistan, and then Nigeria and Brazil are neck and neck in terms of population size in the world. That's just off the top of my head, but I think I'm correct.
As well, because they see their similarities in different parts of the world. So the level of integration among all the major BRICS partners is fascinating to watch. It's something that is happening on an everyday basis. And now that they are virtually all of them under attack, directly and indirectly. Once again, the high-speed rail will start picking up speed.
The #1 hair regrowth shampoo just dropped to its lowest price ever. If you've been wanting to try Spartan Mood Activator...
Exactly.
Exactly.
Pepe, what's so interesting too is how this, RIC, Russia, China, Iran, they've been able to overcome so much despite all the pressure, adversity, aggression against them. And then, as you said, there are these emerging countries, Indonesia, the admission into BRICS, a full member, a huge development, as you noted. And then just after, I want your comment on this, just after the BRICS summit, we have another partner country, Vietnam, and Vietnam's a huge cog in the U.S.'s hope to isolate China. And here you have now Vietnam and China
Joint army drills,
military drills, which is shocking in many ways, given the fact that the last war that either China or Vietnam fought was against each other over 40 years ago, and yet, despite the bad blood that they've had between each other, they've gotten closer and closer, and this kind of speaks to a development I want you to speak to, Pepe, which is, it seems like the more that the United States and its vassals and NATO, they try to place pressure, they try to achieve their objectives of ultimately regime changing the head of BRICS, the more it seems to backfires in ways that are very unexpected.
Absolutely. And what I outline in this column, this latest column that we referred to in the beginning of our conversation, these overlapping NATO wars. NATO is dragging itself and is being dragged itself into these three overlapping wars. And it's already part of at least two of these wars, and soon in the third. The third, by the way, which is the crucial war of the 21st century, is the US war against China. It's now being encompassed by NATO as a NATO war against China as well. And this was basically one of the key decisions of that absolutely ghastly NATO summit. By the way, was more or less almost simultaneous with the BRICS summit. Mm-hmm. The first decision is the war with Russia will continue like forever. No? And the second decision is we are preparing for a war against China. These are the two major decisions of a NATO summit. So the global South looks at it, they understand immediately the big picture. You don't even need to explain it. So these three overlapping wars. War number one, of course, is the war which used to be the war of the collective West against Russia, and may be metastasizing into just the NATO war against Russia, with the US leading from behind. That's where we are at the moment. Because the Trump 2.0 plan...
This refers to, of course, Trump's shift in policy, basically saying the United States is not going to supply weapons anymore directly to Ukraine, but is going to sell the weapons to NATO, and then NATO will put the weapons into Ukraine, either by selling them to Ukraine or by giving them away for free.
Plan is, okay, you, NATO, all of you Europeans, 30 members, right? Plus US and Canada, so 30 European members of NATO. You want to go to war against Russia? Perfect. You buy every bloody weapon that we make from us. No problem. And then you go to war against Russia. We are not, and we will not be directly involved. Okay, this is theory. It can change tomorrow, as we all know. But basically,
because Trump can change anything tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Always going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which is one of everybody's problems with him and his own problems with himself. Lack of consistency can be a problem, and Trump is the epitome of lack of consistency.
Basically, NATO will be paying to go to war against Russia, and the US will be profiting from NATO going to war against Russia, and everything will go downhill, as we already know, even before this whole thing gets to the next level. So the disaster is going to be for NATO and for Europe. So that's war number one.
Yeah, so I don't know that Europe will be profiting from the war with Russia, from NATO's war with Russia. But certainly the United States will be profiting from it because it will be selling the arms to Europe. Okay.
War number two, interlinked with war number one, is the American war in West Asia against Iran, which is also the Israeli war against Iran. So it's the war of the Zionist axis against the axis of resistance, and especially Iran. Okay, what does Trump 2.0 want from all that? A huge business scam. Israel at the center of a new business Middle East, or West Asia, which is the correct terminology, at the center of the connectivity corridor, which is bound to disappear, but for the moment it's still more or less moribund. The IMEC, Israel at the center, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates on the sides, and in the extremities, Europe and India. And that's one of the reasons that explains why India is still hedging their bets vis-a-vis BRICS, because some of the Indian elites still believe that IMEC one day will happen. Not with the genocide in Gaza, by the way.
Okay, that's
ASEAN, all the way.
This is the biggest magnesium scam. New study reveals microplastics found in 90% of all.
To real, and they release.
Okay, that point, okay, Pepe, is that is one big reason why India still is hedging its bet. That is a central point, because in the IMEC corridor, things start off in India, but in the north-south transportation corridor that is trying to be set up for India to run through Azerbaijan to Russia to Europe. That particular corridor also starts in India. Okay, so India hesitating to make a commitment as to which corridor it's going to support. Now, whether it makes a commitment or not, may depend on the military outcome of the war in West Asia going on, right now. If the Israelis completely fail, and if there's a two-state solution coming out of that, okay, and if the Iranians win, then I think the dominant corridor that will be created is the north-south transportation corridor. Everybody will forget about the IMEC. It's just a bad dream. So here we go.
This report before this, 2 or 3 months before the summit. Trump wouldn't even read the title of something like this. And this report like this explains not only what BRICS are doing, but what they have been doing since the summit in October last year in Kazan, all the way to Rio a few days ago.
Sorry, this has been, somehow everything changed around, and we went back into the beginning of this, where we should be at about, I lost my place in here. Let's see if this is where we were.
Very, very tough.
Yeah, and Pepe, I have a question for you. As you were talking, I was thinking about how when we look at Iran,
you don't even need to explain it. So these three overlapping wars. War number one, of course, is the war which used to be the war of India. And that's one of the reasons that explains why India is still hedging their bets vis-a-vis BRICS. Because some of the Indian elites still believe that IMEC one day will happen. not the genocide in Gaza, by the way. Anyway, this is what Trump wants. So Israel is the Lord of West Asia, becomes the geoeconomic trade corridor Lord of West Asia as well, with connections with Europe and India. And all of that presided by Donald Trump, so he can make extra profits. And of course, with Gaza turned into whatever, Trump Riviera or whatever he can come.
And this is all tied up with the total corruption of Donald Trump and his continuing violation of the Constitution of the United States. Of course, he's been flouting the law from the first day of his first term, refusing to divest himself of investments of various kinds, and making obvious deals as president, which benefit himself, and his family. And his tendency in this second term is to completely ignore the idea that the president is not supposed to benefit directly from the president. That's a violation of the Constitution. Trump's whole foreign policy seems to be oriented to creating a situation in Asia that he and his family will directly profit from. So the corruption of this president directly affecting the foreign policy of the United States and bringing us closer to nuclear war, by the way. He was doing it because continuing intense war in West Asia against Iran is certainly going to bring us closer to a nuclear war, because the Russians and Chinese are not going to allow Iran to fall. But we also have to be aware of the fact that Iran itself, we know, has the ability to become a nuclear power, in any time. We know the situation is there. We don't know how close Iran, how its closeness will perhaps turn into being a nuclear power. It depends on the decisions of one man, the Ayatollah. And the Ayatollah Khamenei is being stressed now because it's obvious that lack of nuclear bomb on the part of Iran is having a very big effect on the threats to Iran from the United States, and from Israel. Now, it is only a matter of weeks until Iran can have a nuclear bomb. For all I know, they already have one right now, because they were very close to it. But even if, if they're still, a few weeks away, I have to remark that Iran just tested the Khorramshahr 5. What is the Khorramshahr 5? That is an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the United States. If Iran becomes a nuclear power and puts a nuclear bomb on the warhead of this missile, then the United States itself, in a relatively short time, can be under the gun from Iran and in a position to receive retaliation if it continues further attacks on Iran. But the Israelis, of course, are already under the gun from the missiles of Iran. And if they become a nuclear power, then, of course, the intermediate range missiles they have can be nuclear tipped, as well. But of course, it would be unprecedented from the Iranian point of view if they had the capability to retaliate against Washington or Boston or New York. And that is what we're beginning to look at. So this situation is getting increasingly dangerous for the United States. And Mr. Trump probably has no idea, about anything that I just said, because probably no one is telling him about it.
Up with, So this is the plan, essentially. And war number 3, the preparation for the war against China. So NATO not only are preparing for war against China, as they concluded in their summit in The Hague, but they are now at war with BRICS. And this was declared point blank by that stale piece of Gouda, Tutti Frutti All Ruti, passing as Secretary General of NATO, which makes us think that maybe Stoltenberg, that Norwegian piece of Norwegian wood, was not so stupid after all. So Tutti Frutti All Ruti, he declared that Brazil, India, and China, they better pick up the phone and talk to Putin. Otherwise, they're going to be sanctioned, and NATO is going against them.
For senior women who keep going strong, discover lightweight, all-day comfort in your new wardrobe savior. 1 Instant Lift Ultra.
There you go. So this is the short breakdown of these 3 interlocked wars, which are NATO wars in every degree, the 3 of them, different degrees, but in every degree at least, and spells out a mix of total cognitive dissonance, cosmic stupidity, and a suicidal drive. Because anyone in Brussels, and when I say Brussels, is not only NATO headquarters, is the European Union and the European Commission in Brussels. This triad, there are some people who actually have a brain in this triad, but basically they are just thinking about the retirement day with full pension, and then they can escape to live in Thailand by the beach. But some of these people, they actually think, and they know that this is a no-go, and they know that they don't have the money to support this war. Can you imagine that the European Union is projecting, and NATO, basically both, because the European Union is the, let's say, the civilian arm of NATO, let's put it this way. They are projecting a military budget of 1 trillion euros a year all the way to 2030. How they're going to finance that? They can't. They don't have that money. They're going to have to go.
By the way, they could finance it if they dropped their stupid requirement that the states can only run deficits, of 3%. Of course, for that requirement, to be dropped, it would be necessary for the European Central Bank to issue the money when they ran the deficits. That would be necessary, but they would have to change the treaty language to allow that. And of course, that's going to be difficult for all of them to do. So many nations.
Oh, come on.
But that is essential to create a foundation for the military efforts of the Europeans. But if they don't do that, if they don't change the treaty, of Maastricht, to allow deficits to be run, then the Europeans will not have the money to continue fighting the war inside of Ukraine, or any kind of conflict inside of Ukraine. Or if they insist on diverting the money from social safety nets into military affairs in order to pay for the military adventure, that's going to result in political instability across Europe. Okay, across Europe. The European regimes will constantly be falling if they do not abandon the effort to fight a war against the Russians. Russia, of course, have no such problem. Russia is, roughly speaking, right now, okay, a monetary sovereign, and it can run very large deficits if it so chooses. So we have to keep these economic facts in mind.
To banks once again, and they will never be able to repay it. Even if they steal Russian assets, won't be enough to repay that.
Oh no, they can only steal 350 billion in Russian assets in order to finance the war, and they're talking about a budget of 1 trillion a year. So,
so who's going to pay for that in the long run? 450 million European citizens, voters, taxpayers. I would say that less than 1%, as it stands, already see what's coming. When we have 10 or 20% aware of what's coming, expect upside downs all across the EU. We're not there yet. What we have is the NATO deadline, which is we want a war against Russia in 2030. So this implies provocation after provocation. This implies the opening of several.
of course, they're fighting a war, against the Russians right now. So what Pepe is saying, that they expect to lose this war, against the Russians. And I don't know if they're going to make peace or just be forced into a peace, because the Russians, will simply conquer Ukraine, and the Europeans won't have any voice in that. But now he's suggesting that they're planning on declaring war against Russia, NATO declaring war against Russia in 2030. So now that's really forward-looking. By 2030, having a war with Russia, which they cannot afford to finance. I don't think this is going to happen, because I think somewhere along the line, people are going to realize they just don't have the money for a war against Russia.
New fronts, some of them already open.
They also don't have the military science for a war, against Russia. I mean, I think the Europeans right now are very backward when it comes to military science, and engineering, because they've been relying too heavily on the United States. And by the way, the Russians have a considerable lead over us, and China also has a considerable lead over us as well. Okay, so even if they were up to snuff with respect to you being as strong as the United States in the military science and engineering areas, they still won't be able to fight a war against the Russians in 2030, because the Russians are likely to have even a bigger lead over us by then. I just was watching a video today in that particular context. The Russians have an experimental plane known as the X-500 now. Not too much is known about it, because the Russians are developing the thing in secret and really keeping it secret. But it's supposed to be extremely stealth, composed of a new material they invented themselves, which eats up all radar, so it can't be detected. It also moves at 14,000 kilometers per hour in this plane, which is a bomber, by the way. It's a heavy bomber, not a fighter. Moving at 14,000 kilometers per hour, translated into to American, 8,400 miles per hour. It can reach the whole world, has a range of 22,000 miles, can reach the whole world without having to refuel. It can take off from, let's say, Siberia, Russian Siberia, go on a mission to the United States, and come back, by way of Europe, and land in Moscow. That's the range, it has. And it's moving at 8,400 miles per hour, of course. So it can do this in under 3 hours. Okay. So as a bomber, this makes the B-2 Spirit bomber of the United States look sick, absolutely sick. That thing moves at 650 miles per hour. I don't think we have anything in development here in the United States to compare with this X-500 plane that the Russians are in the testing phase of, evidently, right now.
The South Caucasus is a new front against Russia already opening, instrumentalizing Azerbaijan, which is also playing a double game. MI6 renewed drive to...
Okay, by the way, the Iranians have troops on the Azerbaijani border at this point, and there are reports indicating they're planning to go in, to Azerbaijan and subordinate the place to themselves. And of course, if they do that, then the game of the United States and Azerbaijan, the game of the CIA and MI6 and Mossad inside of of Azerbaijan will be over, because the Iranians will have control of that particular country. This would also make the north-south transportation corridor, it would also strengthen the corridor, because the Iranians would have control of what might be a weak point in that corridor. So,
regiment Salafi jihadi online terrorists all across Central Asia. This is already on. Of course, the Baltic. There is this new Iron Curtain, the 3 Baltic Chihuahuas, Poland and Finland, already on.
We're Phoenix Energy, a family-owned oil company focused on unleashing American oil from North Dakota and Montana.
Being built as we speak. So when we put this all together, the Russians look at these movements in the chessboard, and they have to be ready to all of that at the same time. And I forgot one of the most important ones, Crimea. Sooner or later, there will be a major false flag in Crimea. All of you, our audience, you know that. Now we have electronic intelligence surveillance NATO planes over Crimea every day. So they are preparing something. There's no question about that. So the Russians are aware of all these fronts. The Russians have at least 5 fronts now. They have to. I forgot the 6th, Kaliningrad. And we have a stupid British general who's already telegraphing the plan to isolate Kaliningrad. So this is just what we have at the moment. So soon we're going to have 10 different fronts for Russia, all the way.
I think the general's name is Donahue. I believe. But they're talking up the conquest, of that area. What they don't understand, but what we'll hear from Scott Ritter about, is that to them, Kaliningrad is just a piece of territory. But to the Russians, Kaliningrad is part of Russia. It is Russia. They're planning an attack, on Russia. and they think they're going to get away with that. I don't think they're likely to.
2030, when the so-called Operation Barbarossa 2.0 should start, according to NATO internal planning, right? So as you can see, it's getting mega hardcore by the minute. The Chinese are looking at all that and say, okay, we're ready, but we're not ready now. We will be ready by 2030. And if anything happens to Russia in 2030, we'll have Russia's back in any shape or form, the Chinese way. And Iran, of course. Iran is looking around, and Iran, the leadership in Iran. And when I say the leadership, this is a conversation that I have been having with my Iranian friends for quite a while. It's Ayatollah Khamenei. It's not that meek president. Not at all. It's Ayatollah Khamenei. And it's the people who are around Ayatollah Khamenei. So who was talking to Vladimir Putin, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 days ago, face to face in Moscow? Ali Larijani, which we can consider Khamenei's #1 advisor. So this tells you how serious the real story is. Not to mention those 40 J-10s that are already in Iranian soil.
Yes, 40 J-10Cs, the aircraft that had such great success in the war of Pakistan against India just a month back. Okay, 40 of them are now, in Iran, and Iran is prepared to get even more of them. But a fleet of 40 can certainly contest for control of the skies, in West Asia with the Israeli Air Force, especially since a lot of the Israeli Air Force is getting lost due to missile attacks by the Iranians and the Houthis.
And our Chinese friends are looking forward to having many more being exported to Iran. So Iran knows exactly that we are in a pause, and sooner or later there will be another attack. And this has been confirmed in the past 24 hours by Circus Ringmaster himself.
Right.
You saw that, Danny, right?
Circus Ringmaster himself, of course, is President Trump.
We destroyed everything, obliterate,
We'll attack
and
again.
we will obliterate again.
Yeah, do it again. Keep obliterating, right?
We'll keep obliterate. Let's obliterate. Okay. So this is just a short summary to all of you of how hot these hybrid wars are going to get in the near future, not even in the remote, in the near future. So Russia, China, and Iran, in a sense, and the fact that they talk to each other all the time, they are preparing themselves for the worst. And they are preparing themselves for these the evolution or involution, depending on how you want to describe it, of these NATO wars. But the undisputable fact is these NATO wars are going to go off the rails starting now. And it's a non-situation. It's not an if. It's a non-situation. And, this little column that I wrote was just trying to give you a little warning about the highway to hell ahead,
Pepe,
So that's it for now. I'm going to stop things here. This continues on for some time. And I will be coming back to it for the finale in my next stream, on Saturday, because there's still very many important things for Danny and for Pepe to say and for us to take note of. But for now, let us stop this here. We are a little somewhat overtime with it, because I had so much to say about it. And we will move on to the second of our pieces but not until we've gone over your comments, of course. Okay, so let me do that. So we stopped at Wayne's comment. He says, thanks. Steve Wolfbrand says, shared. D is silent for now because the dogs were making too much noise, so she cut herself off. But if you want to make some comments, D, you're very welcome to chime in now. Wayne Santelman says, the Knesset have lost their minds. No more hostages alive. They can't be after all this time. I don't know if there are any hostages that are still alive.
The claim is that there are some, but until we actually see for ourselves, we don't know. I
Okay.
mean, because you think about it, the hostages are starving just like the people like everybody else in Gaza.
Yes, I agree. That is certainly the case. The question is, will there be any people left in Gaza 2 or 3 months from now? I don't know. If the world wants to stop it, they're going to have to do something right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm frozen again.
Yes, you are.
So, but you can hear me. So.
Yes.
Okay, so Wayne says, hi, Evelina. Evelina says, glad you're back on FB. Yes, I solved the technical difficulty I was having with FB. Wayne said, I'm surprised no one has tried to take out Lindsey Graham. I don't know if I'm surprised by that or not. But Wayne says, just to let you know, a slight bit of distortion, what Audi engineers refer to as foldback. Thank you, Wayne. I wonder if there's still foldback going on. Wayne says, I think there is some positive news. Cambodia and Thailand have a ceasefire in place. Thank you. If the IDF attacks the UAE, something about, I see, a hospital aid ship. Surely that will provoke, resistance in Iran. Yes, I think that will provoke resistance in Iran, and probably the delivery of missiles at Israeli hospitals. Maybe not, though. Maybe they'll restrict themselves to military targets as they usually do, because their level of ethics when it comes to war seems far higher than the Israelis, who have no ethics at all. The Earl of Laurel says, hi, Steve. Hi, Earl. I say hi, Earl, too. Good to see you here, Earl. Fry Steve says, still maintaining poor Russia. It is not NATO's war, it is Putin's war. No, it is NATO's war. Of course it's NATO's war. It's because NATO would not give up its plan for expansion. And it would not give up its plan for expansion because the U.S. insisted on expansion, Friar Steve. That's the cause of this war, as you would know if you were watching previous streams, but you've been gone for a while. And we've covered the causes of the war. And the chief cause of the war was NATO expansion. So, Evelina says, what are the skirmishes between Thailand and Cambodia, both claiming the other violated transitory peace agreement with Malaysia as intermediary? Who do we believe? Well, we'll be covering that in just a few minutes. We'll go over the Scott Ritter video first. Then after that, we're going to do Pepe Escobar's article on that conflict and get to see what Pepe thinks. Even does anyone realize we may be underwater in some parts of the world by 2030, i.e. coastal areas of the U.S. to name one? I don't know that the Trump administration is giving much consideration to that. But I don't think we ought to forget about that possibility. What the hell are we thinking? 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 In this administration? Even when it says, I heard there are still hostages alive. Yes, well, I know people are saying that, and there may well be hostages alive. So let us now move to our second piece of the night, which is the NEMA video with Scott Ritter, which is a really terrific video. It's about nuclear roulette. And we begin the video. Let's see where we begin the video. We begin the video at the beginning and go for about 33 minutes. So let me get it back to the beginning. And let me share it. Let me not forget to share it. What happened? Okay. There, I've got it shared now. Let me start.
Not interested in meeting with Vladimir Putin. Here is what he said.
You know, I'm not so interested in talking anymore. He talks, we have such nice conversations, such respectful and nice conversations, and then people die the following night with a missile going into a town and hitting, I mean, recently, I guess, the nursing home, but they hit other things. Whatever they hit, people die. So, I don't know.
Yeah, here is what Medvedev said, Scott, on Twitter and X in response to Lindsey Graham. He said, it's not for you or Donald Trump to dictate when to get at the peace table. Negotiations will end when all the objectives of our military operation have been achieved. Work on America first. And you see the way that as time goes by, it seems that this sort of...
What he said was work on America first. And then he called Trump Gramps. At least I think I saw that on the Twitter feed.
The momentum that the United States had, and I believe they still have it to break a deal with Russia. They're losing. They're somehow, the way that Donald Trump talking about Putin, the way that Lindsey Graham is somehow driving the show behind the scene. Is the momentum getting away from the opportunity, from what's going on between the United States and Russia?
There's never been an opportunity for Donald Trump to get his way with Russia, ever. This was always pie in the sky thinking. There was a chance for the United States to put pressure on Ukraine to accept reality and to put pressure on Europe to stop reinforcing stupidity. And this could have brought about peace, and Donald Trump would have gotten a lot of credit for that peace, but the peace would have been 100% on terms dictated by Russia. Everybody needs to remember, Russia didn't start this war. This war was thrust upon Russia by the collectives, by the United States, by Donald Trump, the policies of the first Trump administration. During that time, Russia was actively working to fulfill the promise and the potential of the Minsk Accords. And it was the United States that, continued to send lethal weapons to Ukraine to train the Ukrainian army to NATO standards for the sole purpose of confronting Russian separatists and Russian forces in the Donbass region. And according to the pie in sky thinking of the Ukrainian politicians and their CIA and MI6 masters, Crimea as well, to push Russia to its 1991 frontiers. Trump is to blame here. He's the man who made this possible. The Russians were going to cut slack. I mean, I think the Russians were willing to go into temporary amnesia and pretend that Donald Trump was the great peacemaker and not the horrific war maker that he is. The reality, the Russians know the reality, but Russia was never going to yield. They made that clear from the start. Go back to the initial meeting between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov in Riyadh. And they came out saying, well, the Russians have given us reality and we need to yield to everything. But then they turned around and said, but now we need Russia to make some concessions. And the Russians are like, well, what part of address root cause of the conflict don't you understand? We will make no concessions on that. None, zero. There's no latitude for this. And there's no reason for you to hope that this will be. This was known from the start. And yet Donald Trump, instead of acceding to this reality and telling his policymakers, let's find a policy that meets this reality, get this war over with now, he continued to believe that he had some sort of leverage over Russia, perhaps advised by Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, who believed that he could break Russia's economy through sanctioning oil. Steve Kellogg, who believed that they could break Russia's military by continuing to flow weaponry into Ukraine. I mean, these are some of the worst advisors in the world, giving the worst advice in the world to the dumbest president in the world about things Russian. Now he has Lindsey Graham, whispering in his ear as well. Donald Trump is a narcissistic egomaniac. We have to remember that. And if it has to all be about Donald Trump. This is a man who viewed the Russian-Ukrainian conflict not in terms of saving lives. What a hypocrite. He's providing the weaponry that not only kills Russian soldiers, but gets more Ukrainian soldiers killed. He facilitates the continued flow of weaponry into Ukraine that just lengthens this war, complicates this war, but doesn't change the inevitable outcome. The man most...
Scott is right about that. And he's right about calling attention to the role of Trump in setting the stage for this war. We all concentrate on what Biden did and on the start of the SMO, under Biden. But the rearming of Ukraine continued throughout the first 4 years, of Trump. The creation of the biolaboratories, what are there, 20, 23 biolaboratories, throughout Ukraine, created by the CIA and MI6 with the support and the money of the United States. And of course, the training and the arming of the army, of Ukraine. If you consider reserves, those who had special training but were not active or who could easily be activated, the army of Ukraine was 600,000 strong at the start of the SMO. It was 3 times the size of the Russian attack force. How did that army get created? Got created with a huge amount of military support from the United States. Partly that support came from the Obama administration. But then Trump continued it and increased it in his 4 years in the presidency. So, with that background, we see that Trump is also to blame for the rearming, of Ukraine, and for the preparation of Ukraine for fighting of the war, which people blame Russia for starting, but it's obvious that things are much more complicated than that. Many people date the actual start of the war to 2014 and the Maidan coup, which of course was funded and supported by the United States.
Responsible for deaths in Ukraine today is Donald Trump. He could have brought this war to an end. You can't expect Russia in an existential struggle, and this is indeed an existential struggle for Russia, to, say, oh, we'll do what the United States wants us to do, even though the United States started this war back in 2014 or even going back further. Russia has a long memory. They know exactly what's happening here. They know exactly what's at stake here. And they're not going to surrender to the United States, they're not going to yield to Donald Trump. So what we're seeing here is Donald Trump throwing a temper tantrum. Again, he's being poorly advised. If he thinks for a second Russia gives one rat's ass about the threat of sanctions, he doesn't know Russia, nor does he understand China, nor does he understand anybody else, any of the other players out there. What we do know is as we speak, the Ukrainian government is at risk. The confidence in Volodymyr Zelensky is plummeting. And if reports coming out of the Russian intelligence service are true, there's meetings taking place in Switzerland behind the back of Zelensky to have him replaced with Zelensky, who would just be another failed leader. Because again, it doesn't.
Zelensky, for those who do not remember, used to be the chief, of the military operations, of Ukrainians. He used to be running the whole military effort until he was relieved by Zelensky.
Recognize reality. Let me just tell you what the reality for Ukraine is. Ukraine will be strategically defeated by Russia. The current government will not exist, either in terms of the presidency or the construct of the Rada, Ukrainian parliament. There will be new elections, and these elections will produce a pro-Russian government beholden to Russia that will seek to transform Ukraine from the failed proxy of the West that it currently is into a member of the Union state. Ukraine will become, like Belarus, a partner of Russia in the framework of what they call the Union state. It's not the Soviet Union, it's something different, but Ukraine will forever be attached to Russia, to Belarus, to the East. It will never be part of Europe. That's the reality. The sooner Donald Trump recognizes this reality, the better, but he's not going to. I mean, look, Tulsi Gabbard, God bless her soul, is out there, doing God's work about exposing, the scam of Russiagate. But, she's had a deputy appointed. I think Aaron, I can't remember his last name. He's the new number 2 at the ODNI, at the Office of Director of National Intelligence. Aaron Jacob, maybe. But he's a Russophobe. Simply, he's a CIA hack. He was the guy advising Trump about Russia in the first term. The guy giving the bad advice about how to arm Ukraine and all that. That's him. He's now the number 2 guy. There's not anybody advising Donald Trump right now who knows the reality of Russia. They're all enemies of Russia. And as a result, he continues to take us down a very dangerous path because, all of this Russophobia, all this reinforcing the paranoia of Europe leads to a situation that we experienced, for instance, in Wiesbaden a couple of weeks ago, where Christopher Donahue, the 4-star general who commands U.S. forces in Europe and allied forces, sit there and talked openly about how we could take out Kaliningrad, the Russian exclave that used to be part of former East Prussia, the city of Kaliningrad and the surrounding areas. We could take it out, he said, very quickly. No, you can't. But if you tried, you'd die instantly. Because, gosh, let me remind everybody that Kaliningrad is part of the Russian Federation. And the Constitution of Russia deems it to be such. And the nuclear doctrine of Russia is such that anytime the territorial integrity or the sovereignty of Russia is threatened by nuclear armed powers, that Russia will respond nuclearly. So, Chris Donahue, the quickest way to die, because you will be dead within, say an hour and a half of making that decision, is to order NATO forces to move on Kaliningrad. You will be hit by either a Russian nuke or an Oreshnik or something, but you'll be dead. So will your entire staff. So will the entire command and control structure of NATO. Kaliningrad is Russia. It ain't your toy. It ain't a game. It ain't a soccer ball to be kicked around.
That is a very, very important point from Scott. In other words, these people are talking about starting World War III when they talk about conquering a part of Russia, something that is constitutionally a part, of Russia.
And to threaten it, what in God's name do you think we would do if China or Russia threatened Alaska or Hawaii or Texas or California? Kaliningrad is Russia. I mean, these people are stupid, truly stupid. But the dumbest one of all is Donald Trump. Let me make another prediction for you. He says he doesn't want to talk to Vladimir Putin right now.
I got to remind everybody that Scott voted for Trump. I know the decision about who to vote for in the last election was a terrible decision because both of the major choices were terrible. And of course, when you came down to election day, there was no other possibility except for the two choices of the major parties. So it was very difficult, to decide who to vote for, in that situation. But Scott hoped that Trump would have sense enough to make a peace with Russia, to basically recognize, the claims of Russia as, being justified, legitimate, and getting out of the way. And I don't think his hopes were, well grounded, in that. I understand why he thought that. But anyway, he voted for Trump with considerable enthusiasm. And now he's done a 180-degree turn, of course.
Within 30 days, he'll be making that phone call because his policy is about ready to collapse like a house of cards.
You don't need to have some sort of empathy, sympathy toward Russia. Just put yourself in the shoes of Russians. You can understand that Russia cannot afford losing Ukraine. And losing Ukraine, I mean that NATO puts the troops in Ukraine, puts the weapons in Ukraine. Why is that so difficult for the presidents of the United States to understand what is the main cause, what is the real concern on the part of Russia? It's so simple, but when it comes to the presidents of the United States, somehow there are some barriers, there's some obstacles in the way that they think about Ukraine and the policies of Europe together with the United States in Ukraine.
No, Donald Trump understands fully well. This is why he implemented the policies he did in his first term. He knows that the goal is to turn Ukraine into a NATO fist that can strike upwards and threaten Moscow, threaten the Russian strategic center. People need to realize that the Russian Federation is a successor to the Soviet Union in terms of Moscow and the defense of it. Russia was the core element of that. The near abroad, what we call the Baltic states, Ukraine, Georgia, etc., combined with the Warsaw Pact. When Russia's strategic center was defined, it was during the Cold War when you had the Warsaw Pact. So NATO was way the hell out there. Poland was part of the Warsaw Pact. East Germany was. We're talking about NATO, being on the River Elbe, and even further. And suddenly, NATO has progressed eastward. People say, well, why does Russia object to NATO? Because every expansion of NATO brought NATO capabilities that much closer to Russia's strategic depth. And Ukraine is literally, if you carve that out, you are just thrusting NATO straight into the stomach of Russia. Russia can't accept this. Can't accept this at all, especially given the hostile nature that the attitude, the posturing of NATO toward Russia. It just isn't going to happen. It's not going to be allowed to happen. And yet, this is the policy that Trump was trying to implement during his first term. Trump knows damn well what's at stake here. He's just playing stupid games. The Russians, I think, had hoped that Trump would actually back away from the failed policies of the past and recognize that, you can't have Ukraine and NATO. And indeed, early on, you heard Trump administration people talk about that. But then they keep talking as if Zelensky is going to be the president, or a Zelensky-like figure is going to be the president, that Ukraine is going to be this entity that still maintains its Banderist connectivity and has this military linkage. I mean, if you're not talking about the absolute demilitarization of Ukraine, what you create is a NATO nation in everything but the legal, stamp of approval. It's a huge NATO army, equipped with NATO weaponry, capable of striking Russia's strategic depth. That's what Trump wants. That's what he wants. He knows what he wants because he helped design it in his first term. He was briefed by the CIA. This is why they built 20 bases in Ukraine. He was briefed by the Pentagon. This is why they trained the Ukrainian army. Trump knows what's at stake here. That's the hypocrisy of it all. The Russians had hoped that he wouldn't. But what Trump does every day is exposes the fact that he's a lying sack of cow manure who cannot be trusted at all by anybody, especially the Russians. I mean, and this pains me to say because we really do need to have better relations with this Russian government. This Russian government is ready and willing to sit down and, talk about a new way forward with the United States, normalization of relations. But in order to do that, we have to stop this notion that we can strategically defeat Russia, ourselves to strategically defeat Russia. Russia will have nothing to do with it. We wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow it. Would we allow, China to come into Mexico and carve away Texas? Right there, with all the Chinese weapons ready to strike into the American strategic depth? Hell no, we wouldn't allow that. Why in God's name do we think Russia is going to allow NATO to make a move on Ukraine? It's just stupid.
Candy.
Yeah, by the way, not only would we not allow it, but also in our actions with respect to Mexico, we're preparing the way for such a thing to happen. Because in the context of the trade war that Trump is having with everyone, in sight, he's created a situation where Mexico has turned to the Chinese as a trade partner. And they've now constructed very serious agreements with the Chinese. And the Chinese will be soon very influential in terms of the politics of, of Mexico. Trump has constructed a situation where Canada, to our north, and Mexico to our south, formerly bastions of defense of the United States, both of these countries are now turning towards China as their major trade partner. Trump is driving them away. He's jeopardizing our security in the South and jeopardizing our security up, in the North because of the idiocy of his tariff policy.
The United States be great not having Russia and China as the enemy of the United States.
Can we? Sure. I mean, fact is, it's the only way the United States will be great. The United States will not be great by its military. Its military is destroying it. I mean, this military is supposed to protect the United States. It's destroying the United States. It's putting us into a state of bankruptcy. It alienates us with the world. It causes
We're not in a state, okay, of bankruptcy because we are a monetary sovereign and can create, our own money and buy anything with that money that's for sale in the United States. That's the story. That's it. It's a simple story. We're doing a lot of things wrong. We're screwing up in a lot of things. We are tending to isolate ourselves, from the rest of the world with our tariff policies and our military policies. But we are not going bankrupt, and we cannot go bankrupt. There isn't such a thing.
Us to behave in ways that aren't conducive to a new multipolar reality. And it puts us on the track towards wars we can't afford to fight. Literally, all this technological supremacy we brag about, it costs money. And as we just proved with the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, we can't afford it. I mean,
No, we didn't prove that we can't afford it. What we proved was that we haven't built the capability to fight a successful war, against them. We could have built that capability over a period of time if we were serious about our defense establishment. What do we mean? What do I mean by being serious about our defense establishment? Being serious means, in my view, that in spite of our capacity to throw any number of dollars we want to, at our defense establishment, the fact is that we still need to be getting value for the dollar. There's no reason why Russia can produce a defense establishment that is so powerful, spending roughly $60 billion a year, and we have to spend $1 trillion a year, and we still don't have the manufacturing capacity to compete with the Russians when it comes to ammunition, when it comes to missiles, when it comes to the weapons of war. Why are we spending so much money on that? We spend so much money on it because we are doing welfare for the military. We are not monitoring what they're doing. We are not forcing them to become efficient. They are not, an efficient military. There are huge profits inside of the military, and we're allowing those profits to exist, and to happen because of the ideology of our government, which is so favorable towards private sector capitalism. We will not monitor. We will not force our defense establishment to deliver value for the dollar. Russia, is different. China, is different. Both countries spend a fraction of what we spend, but their currency buys far more military output than our currency does. And that's the fault of our management of our military industrial complex by our political leaders. And it's the fault of the corruption inside of that particular system where the military industrial complex is allowed to make political contributions to the Congress and to basically buy the Congress. That's why such a huge amount of money is spent on the military industrial complex compared to the money that our competitors spend. Russia, China, and now Iran spend small fractions of what we spend. And yet, in their regions of the world, their militaries are gaining superiority, okay, over our military. Actually, no one brings up this issue. I mean, people talk about the great amount of money we spend on our military, $1 trillion a year or thereabouts. Okay, and they lament that. They talk about taxpayer dollars. Of course, taxpayer dollars are not a thing. We don't spend taxpayer dollars. Taxpayer dollars have disappeared in the process of settlement of those dollars. New dollars are then issued by the Federal Reserve Bank, okay, to the Treasury Department. And it's those dollars that are spent, Federal Reserve dollars, not really taxpayer dollars. Okay. So keeping that in mind, that's a side point here. But we are not getting value for those Federal Reserve dollars that go into the Treasury Department and are spent, okay, on the military in this country. The whole thing, okay, is a racket from the standpoint of effective production that can be used in the interests of the United States. It's part of the rot of our political system caused by money in politics. Scott will talk a little bit about that as
we ate up 25% of our THAAD missile stocks. Those are the missiles supposed to shoot down all the Russian missiles, the Chinese missiles, if we ever go to war against Russia and China. We just use 25% of them to help defend Israel against not even Iran's, B team in terms of ballistic missile capability. Our SM-3 stocks, we haven't been producing SM-3s because we haven't been in a war like this, but they're very expensive missiles, and we just blew through them. We can't build them very fast. The fact is, any Pentagon planner, any Pentagon logistician will sit there and should be advising people, we can't sustain a high-intensity conflict against a peer-level force like Russia and China for more than a week. And then we run out of everything.
Yeah, so that's an issue. I mean, that's an issue. Given the huge amount of money we're spending on defense, okay, on the military, that should not be an issue. But it is, because the military-industrial complex has its way with our Congress and is siphoning off huge profits from the Federal Reserve money that is spent on that.
We run out of everything. And that's the reality of it. We've built this hugely expensive military that, we have enough money to gold plate it. But when the veneers cut through,
and we do gold plate it,
we're down to cardboard, baby, because that's all that's left. This is not the path to greatness. The path to greatness is normalization of relations, normal economic, not this garbage that Trump just pulled off with the EU, the biggest scam ever. I mean, just think about it. There's nothing about the deal real. Ursula von der Leyen cannot commit Europe to $600 billion in investment in America. So it's a lie. There's nobody there lining up. There's nobody there lining up to give America $600 billion. So it's a lie, straight up lie. Isn't going to happen. The $760 billion in energy, I mean, we don't have that much energy to sell Europe, even if we wanted to. It's not how the system works. And even if we did, Europe's paying 3 to 4 times as much for this. In order to commit to $760 billion from the United States, they have to cut off, for instance, the gas they buy from Norway. It's not just about delinking itself from Russia. I think, $23 billion worth of petroleum products were sold last year. But it means Norway, that in order to commit to this, you have to stop buying cheap Norwegian gas, and you have to buy this hugely expensive American gas. I mean, it might not cost America much to produce it, but by the time we, liquefy it, put it on ships, bring it over, deliquefy, get it into the system and all that stuff, 3 to 4 times as much as the Norwegian stuff. The Norwegian stuff's more expensive than the Russian stuff. And this is what Europe has signed up to. It's not going to happen, by the way. We don't have $760 billion worth of liquid natural gas products to sell to.
Oh, by the way, the Russians have opened up one of the pipelines, okay, of Nord Stream again, and are ready to sell LNG to Europe. If the nations of Europe will consent to buying the gas from Russia, Putin is ready to sell it at the usual market prices for Russian gas. He's not even going to price gouge Europe.
To Europe. And they couldn't buy it even if we did. It's a scam, a setup, fake, fraud, a con. But this is America. We can't be great doing this. I mean, my God, I'm not sympathetic. You know, the Europeans, they built their own ship. They shot the holes in the hull and it's sinking. That's on them. But I hate to see people debase themselves like this. I mean, as much as I despise Ursula von der Leyen, to watch her.
Scott is having his own troubles with paralysis.
I think we're back. to watch her debase herself. To watch her debase herself in this fashion is nobody wants to see that. What we'd like to see is normal relations. And in fact, if we want to have normal, healthy relations with Europe, we can't be engaged in this sort of thing. Europe needs to have trust in us. How is this a trustworthy partner? We're a colonial power overlording over Europe. It's just it's sickening. Every aspect of how Donald Trump relates with our erstwhile friends and allies is sickening. It sickens me.
We know
Scott is right about that, by the way. So totally right.
that during the Biden administration, Starmer was asking the Biden administration, if you remember that meeting between the Biden administration and Starmer, they were asking some sort of permission from the US government to attack Russia, to hit deeper into the Russian soil. It seems that even not having that sort of connection between the Trump administration and Europeans, they're getting that from the Trump administration. When you look at the attack on nuclear bombers in Russia, it's something. It's not something small to be ignored. It's something big. Russia is not just panicking. The way that Russia is behaving doesn't diminish the importance of what has happened. Do you feel that we have some sort of sanity in the Pentagon? Because I see this problem coming from Pentagon and the sort of reports that they're giving, the sort of information they're giving Donald Trump. Because we had Pentagon going against Biden, going and deciding not to escalate against Russia. But you don't see that role coming from Pete Hegseth and anybody from Pentagon. At least we can say that nothing is coming out but some sort of propaganda about drones making new weapons. And you don't see any sort of strategic thinking or Pete Hegseth putting out something more sane when it comes to the war in Ukraine.
Well, actually, Hegseth did. I mean, in the aftermath of the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, Hegseth took a look at the expenditure of munitions and the drawdown that's already taken place in American stockpiles, and he said, "We're not sending anything else to Ukraine." He was overridden. The man who seems to be in charge now is Mike Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA. I mean, there was a meeting where Donald Trump, turned to Ratcliffe, bypassing Hegseth and saying, "Hey, are we going to be able to get those weapons there?" No, I mean, it's all a lie. Again, everything about Trump is a lie. 17, Patriot batteries to full complement. They don't exist. But the point is, Ratcliffe took the lead on this, not Hegseth. I believe the Pentagon continues to be staffed with professionals who, their job is to, lay out the reality of war. The attack on the Russian strategic bombers was a British affair run by British intelligence, maybe backed by the CIA. The CIA is a rogue entity right now, absolutely rogue, out of control. And I think what Trump is doing right now is turning to the irony here, turning to Ratcliffe into the Russian Mission Center and saying, turn up the screws. He tends to forget it was the Russian Mission Center that helped create the BS narrative that was used to weaponize against him, or at least aspects of it. I know there were some people who questioned some of the intelligence, but the point is, I mean, Trump is just confused. He's just a confused man right now. These drone attacks that are taking place in Russia right now, they're all planned by the British, 100% planned by the British. The Germans are facilitating with some technologies, et cetera, but this is a British operation, and you have Trump meeting with the Brits, being briefed by the Brits. He understands what's going on. He may now decide to allow Ukraine to use the ATACMS to a greater range. I think people should be reminded. Again, I can't speak for the Russian government, nor would I ever be advising the Russian government on what to do. But one, has to keep in mind that when Meshnik was fired back in November, it was a weapon system under development, meaning that the system that was fired was not a production missile. It was a missile that had already undergone certain testing. It was ready for operational testing. But it was a missile that had, the booster taken from this missile, the second stage taken from this missile, the post-boost vehicle modified from this missile, and then handmade dispensing, mechanisms and purpose-built, submunitions. It was all sort of a pre-production missile put together. They fired it and it worked. And at that point in time, Putin signed off on it and said, turn it into, full-scale production.
And now they have 300 of them.
Now Putin has announced that the Oreshnik is in serial production. That means that all those components that were used in the Oreshnik, instead of being pulled one of and modified, they now have a production line. So it's not just the Votkins machine building plant that's assembling this. It's a propulsion center outside of Moscow. It's a guidance center outside of Perm. It's warhead center outside of Chelyabinsk. They all have now production lines dedicated to this. The entire system has come together, and now it flows into Votkins, gets turned into a serially produced missile, which then gets turned over to the Russian military. And the reason why I bring all this up is that if the Russians decide to unleash the Oreshnik, it's not going to be one missile. I mean, the Ukrainians are playing with fire here. And I think Putin has come out and said just the other day that if Europe or Germany participates directly or indirectly in an attack against Russia, Ukraine will be the target of Russian retaliation. So I think you will see the Oreshnik brought in, not in a single fire, but we're talking about a sustained barrage of Oreshniks that will just level Ukraine. That's the direction we're heading here. Up until now, Russia's probably...
I think Scott's right about that. That's the direction we're going towards. That's going to decapitate Ukraine, dissolve Ukraine in a matter of days. If the Russians hit them with 50 Oreshniks, that's going to collapse the society in Ukraine. Leadership will be gone, and the war will stop.
Held back on that in hopes that Donald Trump would do the right thing. But if Trump is stupid enough to allow ATACMS to be used, this goes back to the situation that exists in the fall of 2024 when the Biden administration signed off on this very insanity. People should remember what the reality was at that time. In November, I think it was Rear Admiral Radcliffe. No, Radcliffe is the CIA director. I can't remember his name. Butler, something like that. He's the plans guy for Buchanan, Rear Admiral Buchanan, Director of Plans for Strategic Command. That's our nuclear armed forces. And he gave a briefing to CSIS in Washington, D.C., where he answered some questions. And basically, he said that the United States is prepared to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia. That means a limited nuclear war with Russia. And he said, we're prepared to win. He said something else that maybe the government should be more honest with the American people about what winning means. Because he said, if we have a nuclear exchange with Russia and we win, life will never be the same for Americans ever again. Meaning the thing we call life that we all love, it'll be totally different because we'll be living in a nuclear wasteland, no electricity, no food supplies, martial law, no freedom, no nothing. That's the future for fighting a nuclear exchange with Russia. Now, people say, well, that's just planning. I mean, he's just planning. Well, except that it's not just that, because the Russians had said that if the Biden administration allows these long-range ATACMS strikes, that their nuclear doctrine will be brought into play. And they published a new nuclear doctrine, I think, in late November, early December. There was a briefing held at Congress. The CIA went around and briefed. And I ended up talking to a very senior Democrat who was present at this briefing. And I said, I know you can't give away national secrets, and I wouldn't ask you to, but the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, they all say that the CIA assessed that Russia was bluffing. I said, is that what the CIA said? Did they believe that Russia was bluffing about the nukes? And this very senior Democrat said, no. The CIA said the exact opposite, just not bluffing. That if these ATACMS are used, Russia, if the wrong targets are hit, Russia will use nuclear weapons against NATO. He said, that's not the scary part. The scary part was the Biden administration, senior Biden administration people in the briefing saying, we're ready for this. So Buchanan's briefing wasn't just theoretical. Buchanan's briefing was, we're ready to go to war. And there are people saying there was a better than 50% chance we were going to have a nuclear war at the end of last year. Better than.
So, okay, let us keep in mind, or let us ask the question ourselves. Should we ever have leaders of the United States willing to fight a limited nuclear exchange with anybody, okay, including the Russians, knowing what that means for the United States, whether we win or lose that exchange? From my point of view, no. We should never vote for people that crazy to lead us in the election of 2024. We obviously had a choice. I mean, on election day, we had a realistic choice of two people who were representing forces that would realistically consider such a possibility. Obviously, Biden's group was considering such a possibility. And now we see that Trump's group is also considering such a possibility. So we had two unacceptable choices. Everybody has to think about why that was the case.
50% chance. The only thing that saved it was Donald Trump coming out. He gave a Time magazine interview where he said, if I'm president, I won't continue this ATACMS thing. And that allowed the Russians to say, okay, we don't need to go into nuclear war right now. We'll wait for the new president to come in and he'll end this stupidity. We just have to ride this thing out. Russia's been riding out stupidity like the Ukrainian drone attack against their strategic bombers. That should have brought about an immediate nuclear response by doctrine. They attacked Russia's nuclear bombers. So it should have been the end of a lot. But the Russians are behaving responsibly. They're behaving responsibly because they're still holding out hope that Donald Trump will do the right thing and stop this insanity. But now Trump says he doesn't want to talk to Putin. So my guess is that Trump is going to do the dumbest thing possible and authorize the Ukrainians to use long-range strike missiles. And they're going to do that, and then Russia's going to flatten Ukraine using Oreshniks. And then Donald Trump's going to make a panicked phone call to Vladimir Putin to try and stop World War III. We were close to 50%, over 50%. There's a greater than 50% chance of a nuclear war last fall. Straight up. Not exaggeration. If Donald Trump allows long-range strike, we're back to that level of stupidity. Better than 50% chance of nuclear war. Do we really want to roll the dice? I mean, this is why you have to question who's advising the president, because I think Trump continues to believe that the Russians are bluffing, because the Russians have absorbed these attacks and just continue, pressing home on a winning formula. But Russia can only take so much. And at some point in time, when you cross a certain line, I mean, already you have these British-directed drones, taking out critical infrastructure. Fortunately, it's a harassment, but it's not actually harming Russia in terms of their strategic economic capabilities. But if the ATACMS starts coming in, striking command and control centers, logistics centers, and things of that nature, the gloves come off. And I think you're going to see destruction in Ukraine like you've never seen before. And then the next thing the Russians will say is the next strike is nuclear, and it won't be limited to Ukraine. And that's when Trump will make the phone call. So he can sit here and sit there and say, I'm really not feeling like a phone call right now. Too bad, Donnie baby. It ain't gonna be Russia calling you, by the way. It isn't gonna be Vladimir Putin saying, please talk to me, please. It's gonna be Donald Trump sending a panic message. I need to talk to Putin now. We need to end this war now. And Putin's gonna say, we end it the way we always said we're gonna end it. And this time I think Donald Trump says yes, and we move forward. But it takes us to go right up to the edge of the nuclear abyss to achieve this common sense, solution. The war could end today, right now, without playing nuclear, roulette.
Seems, Scott,
With
that
said,
European
folks, I'm stopping it right there. I may come back on Saturday with the rest of this, but I thought this stream was pretty profound all the way through, all the perspectives of Scott. And his prediction that we're on the point of another nuclear roulette moment is very, very important for us. Anything that regular citizens inside the United States can do to prevent such a moment, we need to do. Now, the Russians themselves will be doing something to prevent such a moment. What they will be doing is that if the ATACMS start hitting important targets inside of Russia, they're going to reply with Oreshniks, trying to take the Ukrainians out completely. If they're successful with that, that will probably head out, the nuclear roulette, moment. So we can hope for that. I think there's some hope in the fact that the Russians have 300 of the Oreshniks to use, and that I think a number far less than that will be enough to knock out this government of Ukraine and put a stop to the war. So I'm going to leave you with that thought and look at your comments now. Dee, any comments?
No, there's just a lot of information. It's just, you just keep thinking like we really don't have leadership here.
Yes, we don't have leadership here in the United States, and we don't have leadership inside of Britain either.
No.
I mean, what the hell are they allowing? Why the hell are they allowing MI6 to run wild and to engage with the CIA in these intelligence operations all over the world? I mean, it's crazy and dangerous. Very dangerous what MI6 has been doing in relation to Russia.
Mm.
I mean, it's criminal. And there's nobody in Whitehall to stop them. Maybe Nigel Farage has an ounce of sanity, sanity there. Maybe he'll be able to do something about it. Wayne Santelman says NATO attacks Kaliningrad. If NATO attacks there, we won't be around much longer. Then he refers to the response from Belarus as my thoughts, tactical nuke to start with. Yeah, well, if they'll use a tactical nuke, they'll use Oreshnik first because it has the power of a tactical nuke and will not leave the radiation there. Wayne says, I agree, dangerous situation up in Mexico-U.S. border. Well, it's not simply the U.S. border. It's also just creating a Mexico that is a nation unfriendly to the United States, and that may start bringing military capability in from China. Evelina says, plainly said, Dr. Joe. Brilliant. Thank you, Evelina. Thank you very much. Evelina says, not getting value for our dollar by prioritizing profit before defense. Oh, yeah, we're letting the defense industrial complex companies, just run wild. I mean, just run wild. I mean, the level of competition for those contracts, it's simply not there. There are only a limited number of companies, and they won't compete with each other. Evelina says, not real competition, not the kind of gut-wrenching competition we need to lower the costs on this stuff. I mean, everybody working for the defense industry companies, high up in those companies, are making a fortune. And many of the people who work for them at the R&D level are operating with extremely high salaries. And there's an awful lot of waste in the system. Everybody knows there's a huge amount of waste in the system. The Pentagon is allowed to escape year after year after year without passing an audit. It's ridiculous. So it's the Brits operating all the drone attacks in Russia. Yeah, the Brits are mainly doing it, but they're using intelligence and surveillance information from where? From us. From our satellites. Friar Steve, there will be no nuclear change. The Russian, that's just a myth by Putin to make Americans afraid. Friar Steve, I gotta say this, Friar Steve. Okay, I like you. Okay, I really do like you. But you really need to go soak your head somewhere. You really do. Because there is no myth. Putin is a cold and calculating person. And we are lucky he is, because if he wasn't that way, we would have had a nuclear exchange long since, given the idiots running our country. We are pushing Putin too far. He cannot tolerate real damage to the infrastructure, okay, of Russia and still remain as the leader, okay, of that country. He has to look out for the interests of Russia, okay, and Russians. And he has to look out for the existential threat that NATO represents for the Federation and for the well-being, okay, of the Russian people. If I were running Russia, I hope I would have the cleverness to do the things that Putin has done, okay, over these many years. To my mind, he is the most capable leader, okay, of Russia, maybe since Peter the Great. I mean, he is just so clever and so responsible.
Yes.
And he has a certain Christian ethics also, which nobody gives him credit for. I mean, he is so much more moral a person than Trump. I mean, well, I don't want to go on praising Putin as a person. That's not really the point. The point here is he cannot accept serious danger to Russia in this situation without responding with the most basic and effective tools that he has. That means there will be Oreshniks in great numbers soon if these attacks continue. That means that Trump's allowing ATACMS and other missiles of that type to continue to be shipped, okay, to Ukraine is the height of irresponsibility, because it will force Putin to escalate to the next level, which is the Oreshnik level. And then we will be left in the position of either totally backing off or using tactical nukes ourselves. And once the tactical nukes are used, then Putin will reply with hypersonic missile capability tipped, with nuclear weapons. And then we will all wish that we weren't alive to see that. So far, Steve, go soak your head. Evelina Pont. Left Labor government is dead. This is why regular BRICS turning to new Corbyn party in droves. Yeah. 500,000 signups in the first 4 days. Evelina Pont says, especially the young. Yes. I have high hopes. I have high hopes for Corbyn, okay, in the next election. I would finally like to see Corbyn as the Prime Minister, okay, of Great Britain. He deserved to be the Prime Minister a long time ago, and he would have been if not for the manipulations and the dishonest smears of Keir Starmer and his group. The whole matter was disgusting. Okay, let us go on with the rest of the program now. Okay, Dee, would you like to read the next piece?
Sure.
It's by Pepe Escobar, and it's a hell of a piece. Okay, the title of it is Why Thailand and Cambodia Are at War in the Heart, okay, of ASEAN.
Okay, I'll be right there. Gotta do something.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Pepe Escobar. Why Thailand and Cambodia are at war in the heart of ASEAN. July 28th, 2025. Fog of war rules. A crack Thai analyst worries about the intersection of so many vectors not making sense. Quote, there's something so odd about this war. It feels like something is pushing both sides to escalate. End quote. Escalation so far also rules. Even with tariff temper tantrum Trump, T4 now repositioned as peacemaker and touting his own art of ceasefire deal. Yet this Monday, it's actually Malaysia, currently the chair of ASEAN, that de facto mediates with Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim hosting ceasefire talks in Putrajaya, as previously confirmed by Foreign Minister Mohammed Hassan. Quote, this is an ASEAN matter and as chair we should lead. End quote. Malaysia in the end did lead. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim personally broke a ceasefire between the belligerents. And that brings us to the inevitable question, what toxic confluence of factors has crystallized into a hot war in the heart of Southeast Asia? It starts with a family feud, as stated by a top Thai intel source, involving the Thai Shinawatra and the Cambodian Hun Sen clans. Thaksin Shinawatra from Chiang Mai in the north, billionaire former prime minister recently pardoned by King Maha Vajiralongkorn is the
Yeah,
personal.
the Thai names are absolutely a mouthful.
Yes.
Absolutely a mouthful. Okay, and by the way, okay, it's Chiang Mai. Okay, in the north. Okay, that's the
Okay.
way you pronounce that one. It's a beautiful major city. Okay, in Thailand.
Okay.
Please go on.
Okay, then. Where was I?
You King Maha Vajiralongkorn.
Yes, is the perennial strongman of Thai politics. One of his stories, Petra Patangtarn, is the current Thai Prime Minister. Hun Sen, a former Khmer Rouge soldier.
Okay, I should add here, Cambodia used to be very much divided, with the movement that was known as the Khmer Rouge, killing millions of people, okay, in Thailand. It was a brutal movement. With that as background, he defected in 1977. Please go on.
Yeah, former Prime Minister in two stints, 1985 to 1983, or it should have been 83 to 85, and 1998 to 2023. Currently President of the Senate is the perennial strongman in Cambodia. The Shinawatra Hun Sen clans used to be very close, but they recently had an irreconcilable falling out, partly due to Thaksin's daughter, Yingluck's new husband. By the way, she is also a former prime minister, planning to open a large casino in the tourist paradise Phuket, something directly connected to the relaxation of Thai gambling laws.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is also corrupt.
Yeah. The new venture will heavily affect Hun Sen's enormous profits from his casinos located in Phuket along the Thai border. It gets way more complex when we factor what lies behind the long, unresolved border dispute, now flaring up again because of what else? Pipelistan.
Pipelineistan.
The Pipelineistan. It's all about oil and gas exploration. The current Thai-Cambodian border is demarcated mostly along the watershed of the Dang Creek mountain range. Hun Sen is eager to gain even tiny pieces of land on the Thai side of the watershed, using ancient Khmer temples as an excuse. The whole area was once part of the mighty Khmer Empire. Hun Sen's gamble is to set up legal precedent for the border to be educated at the coastline. That, of course, would affect the maritime borders in the Gulf of Thailand and who controls how much of the oil and gas fields. Interesting. Currently, multiple Western companies, including Chevron, hold drilling rights on the Thai side of the maritime border, hence the Western support for Thailand.
Okay, by the way, Thailand is a place, okay, that Pepe has a house in.
Okay.
And he lived in Thailand for, for many, many years. And he still spends a good part of the year in Thailand. He loves the place. I should add, I visited Thailand once a long time ago in 1969. I was I was working for a defense contractor at that time, and they had a consulting project, okay, in Thailand. And I was kind of forced to go there to do some consulting on a counterinsurgency project. I'll tell you that whole story some other time. But in the end, it cost me my job. But that's another story. Okay, please go. Anyway, Thailand is a beautiful place. A very, very beautiful place. With very, very friendly and nice people in it. Please go on.
Enter China. Beijing has a very significant trading relationship with Thailand, a 135 billion turnover. Compare it to a mere 12 billion when it comes to China and Cambodia. The Chinese and the Thai militaries are very close. In terms of strategic interest, as much as China may be investing a lot in Cambodia modernization, including a mega new business hub outside the Phnom Penh, Beijing will not support Hun Sen's now backfiring gamble.
Okay, I should add, Phnom Penh is the capital of Cambodia.
Okay. Now we enter the most sensitive part of the equation. Thaksin was essentially brought back to the Thai political chessboard by the king's close advisors in order to keep the liberal, quote, menace at bay. But now the optics are that the Thaksin has messed up. And the echoes coming from the monarchy circles is that the king is extremely angry and has taken the conflict with Cambodia personally. There are several factors in the Thai military. An extremely complex environment. The commanders currently in control of the situation at the border are known as the King's Men. So what next? For quite a while, insiders of the highly volatile Thai political environment have been stressing that the kingdom has once again played a complex balancing act in in many aspects, getting both the US and China on its side. So there is a strong possibility the Thai military would push deeper into Cambodia, fulfilling irredentist demands coming from deeply nationalist quarters. In parallel, that might turn out to be a priceless opportunity to correct the colonial borders drawn by the France-Siam Treaty in 1907. To make it even more intractable, the moves overlap with powerful comprador elites in Bangkok are pouring and bribed into blocking increased global South cooperation. Yes, this is almost part of the war on BRICS. Now, for the big picture, both Thailand and Cambodia, important nodes of the 10-member ASEAN, are deeply China connected, from geography to geoeconomics. Ergo, imperial divides and rule applies in spades and subordinated to the maximum imperative, as in McKindler and Mann Revisited, burning down the rimland all around the heartland. That's the current thrust on steroids by the Empire of Chaos. We ain't seen nothing yet. And never forget, Thailand is also a BRICS partner. Chaos simultaneously destabilizes both ASEAN and BRICS. Now for blood on the tracks. Literally, a key new Silk Road project is the 6,000-kilometer plus high-speed rail line that will eventually connect Kunming, capital of Yunnan province, to Southeast Asia all the way to Singapore. Kunming Vientiane in Laos is already up and running, a roaring success. The Thai extension all the way to Nang Khai, plagued by immense corruption problems, may finally be up and running by 2030. A Vietnam-Cambodia extension will link Ho Chi Minh City and Phnom Penh to Bangkok.
Well, that's amazing.
It is. The current war broke out exactly at the Thai-Cambodia border. The desperation row playbook is as predictable as ever. Blow up ASEAN's new connectivity corridors from the inside with a tariff war coupled with a possible regional war. GlobalSouth.co has been providing invaluable analysis, even suggesting a roll call of highways to hell promoted by the Empire of Chaos. So here's a not exhaustive list of divide and rule instances encircling China, Iran, and Russia, what I call the revamped RIC, Primakov Triangle. It all starts with Gaza and Palestine on the forefront of the war on the axis of resistance. Then there's the ongoing disintegration of Syria via rehabilitated Salafist jihadists, the projected carve-up of Lebanon, Sultan Erdogan's perennial double-triple game, and most of all the Zionist axis to be renewed attack on Iran. Russia will have to deal non-stop with several new fronts beyond the collapsing proxy war in Ukraine, the new Iron Curtain in the Baltics, and the dream of turning it into a NATO lake, terror in the Black Sea, the supreme MI6 obsession,
Yes.
instrumentalization of Moldova, and the planning of an attack on Transnistria.
To explain there, Transnistria, okay, is an area just to the south, of Odessa, but it's not. It doesn't have connectivity to Russia, okay, but it's Russian.
Okay.
Okay, and so one of the things likely to happen as a result of the Ukraine war is that when Odessa falls to the Russians, which may be in the next few weeks, there will probably be a move by the Russians to close the gap between, Transnistria, okay, and the rest of Russia, to take over Transnistria, okay, as well, where support of the population for a Russian takeover can be counted on. Okay, so of course, what MI6 is doing is they're trying uh, uh, to influence the government, okay, in the Moldova area to plan, okay, an attack on, Transnistria before the Russians can get in there and take it over. So that's the background for that. Please go on.
MI6's inroads among budding jihadis across Central Asia and Azerbaijan's mafioso game spearheaded by Ali Aliyev.
Yes, he is the president, okay, of Azerbaijan, Aliyev.
Ali Akbar Velati, senior advisor to Ayatollah Khamenei, is warning that the proposed U.S. takeover of the strategic Zangezur corridor is a geopolitical gamble by the, quote, the U.S., Israel, NATO, and pan-Turkish movements, quote, to, quote, weaken the resistance axis, sever Iran's link with the Caucasus, and impose a land blockade on Iran and Russia in the region's south. End quote.
Really complex, isn't it?
It is. Moving to South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, we have on and off chaos to be imposed on India-Pakistan relations, both SCO members.
Yes, and SCO, for those who don't know, is the Shanghai Cooperation. The O stands for organization, and that is it's a defense inclined organization, and it's very interesting. That includes both India, okay, and Pakistan, who, in terms of this organization, should not be fighting, with each other anymore, but who just got through with a very brief war. Please go on.
Every possible attempt in the book and off the book to destabilize the South China Sea, all the way to forcing Taiwan into a final provocation against China. Renewed shenanigans on China, Japan via the Dioste Senkaku Islands, and attempts at fostering a regional war between Thailand and Cambodia, coupled with possible color revolutions, Myanmar all over again. All of the above does not even feature the Africa front, from Somalia to Nigeria, a BRICS partner, all the way to the alliance of Sahel states and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and in South America, the target of choice is of course Brazil, especially after the success of the BRICS summit in Rio. Brasilia, regarded as a BRICS weak link in DC, is now under relentless trade and geoeconomic attacks by Trump 2.0. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, unfailingly polite, has at least summarized the pulse of the global South. Quote, the United States has lost its legitimacy to lead the world in the eyes of nations. It is no longer morally qualified to speak of values or peace while supporting genocide in Gaza. That means virtually no takers across all Asian latitudes to become a Ukraine 2.0, subordinated to CIA, MI6, NATO plans to manufacture a war on China. That's exactly what Malaysia's rotating presidency of ASEAN will be imparting today on both Bangkok and Phnom Penh. The, the ASEAN Annual Summit will take place in Malaysia next October. So, what should BRICS do in the short run? As incadences prevails, move with discretion and cunning, and take the long view, for instance, privileging, quote, ASEAN centrality. In the end, the U.S. may turn out to be the swing state after all, as the core divide and rule power center of the West remain Tel Aviv and London.
That was an absolutely brilliant column, by Pepe.
Mhm.
I mean, it just went all over the areas of the world, but connecting the trends in each of the areas to the overall strategy of the United States to maintain a hegemonic position by acting as the empire of chaos and creating chaos in various areas of the world, and most recently in ASEAN, pointing out that influences from the United States had a part in creating the conflict between the Cambodians, and the Thais. And the way he tied in the family dynamics in Thailand and Cambodia to what was going on there, and the competition between the families, and the hopes for oil wealth, oil and gas wealth, at the bottom of it all. All this was absolutely brilliant. And I don't know who could have written this particular column, outside of Pepe Escobar, because no one has the range of knowledge of all of these political systems that he has. And no one else has the acumen to connect all the trends in just the way that he did in this particular article. It was a magnificent, and brilliant article. And the only one I've seen so far that brings clarity to just what happened in ASEAN. So, and the way he related it to BRICS and the overall trend in BRICS was masterful, as well. So I wanted to bring that to you very badly because it's really so important as a future avenue of conflict, and one that the United States will get itself involved in as long as it keeps on pushing to remain the hegemon, of the world. Any further comment on that, D?
I thought that was very interesting. It was very good, with explaining,
Yes.
The whole scenario.
Yes, it was really good that way. It's not surprising he has that kind of deep knowledge because he's always kept his fingers in Southeast Asia because he lives in Thailand for much of the year. He loves it there. By the way, I can understand that, perfectly. Well, for part of the year, the climate in Thailand is absolutely beastly. In the rainy season, it's absolutely beastly, hot and rainy, but things like the cuisine and the Thai culture and the Thai people and the Thai outdoors, the Thai scenery, all very, very engaging. And you can well understand why someone would live in Thailand for half the year, okay, and have a house there. And why having such a background would lead him to keep his finger on everything that's happening in Thailand and the rest of Southeast Asia, as well. So previously, we were very aware of the expertise of Pepe in Russian affairs, in China affairs, in Brazil affairs, in West Asian affairs. But we can now add to all that, of course, experiencing his knowledge, okay, of ASEAN and Southeast Asian trends, okay, as well. So I'll cut that off now, and we'll look at your comments on that. Dawn Foster says, "Hey everyone." Evelina says, Oreshnik's, no radiation. Dawn Foster has joined and says hello to everyone. Hello.
Hello, Dawn.
Okay, so let us go on to our final two articles for the night, which are pretty short, so perhaps we can wind those up without too much difficulty. The next piece is by Joe Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner, okay, in economics a number of years ago. Very well known, okay, economist, and in general, a very nice man who is usually on the right side, on the correct side of every issue. And on July 28, 2025, Joe says, under President Luis Inacio Lula da Silva's leadership, Brazil has chosen to reaffirm its commitment to the rule of law, even as America seems to be renouncing its own constitution. It must be hoped that other political leaders will demonstrate similar bravery in the face of bullying by the world's most powerful country. I'm not sure we qualify as the world's most powerful country anymore. We seem to be the most powerful country at causing trouble in the world, and not good trouble. But outside of causing trouble, I no longer think we're the most powerful country in the world. Anyway, New York, for decades, the United States was the champion of democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. Well, that's debatable too, of course. Of course, there were glaring discrepancies between the rhetoric and reality. During the Cold War, the U.S. overturned democratically elected governments in Greece, Iran, Chile, and elsewhere in the name of defeating communism. At home, the U.S. was in a battle to uphold African-American civil rights a century after slavery's end. More recently, the Supreme Court has acted aggressively to restrict efforts to rectify the legacies of the long history of racial discrimination. And that, of course, is quite true. And there's a picture of Joe Stalin. But while the U.S. has often failed to practice what it preached, now it does neither. President Donald Trump and the Republican Party have seen to that. In his first term, Trump's contempt for the rule of law culminated in his attempt to overturn democracy's most important principle, the peaceful transition of power. He claimed and still insists that he won the 2020 election, even though Joe Biden received some 7 million more votes, and even though dozens of courts rules that there had been no significant electoral irregularities. Anyone familiar with Trump may not have been surprised. The big surprise was that some 70% of Republicans believed that the election was rigged. Many Americans, including a majority of one of the two major parties, have gone down the rabbit hole of outlandish conspiracy theories, and disinformation. For many Trump supporters, democracy and the rule of law are less important than preserving the American way of life, which in practice means ensuring the domination by white males at the expense of everyone else. For better and for worse, America has long provided a model for others to follow, and unfortunately, there are demagogues around the world more than willing to adapt Trump's formula of trampling on democratic institutions. Again, uh, uh, repudiating the values that underpin them. Prominent examples: Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, who went so far as to try to emulate the January 6, 2021 on the U.S. Capitol to prevent Biden's election. That attempted coup on January 2023 in Brasilia was larger than the attack on the U.S. Capitol, but Brazil's institutions held firm. Now they are demanding Bolsonaro be held accountable. Meanwhile, the U.S. has been moving in the opposite direction since Trump's return to the White House in January. Once again, Trump has made it clear that he loves tariffs and abhors the rule of law, even violating the trade agreement he made with Mexico and Canada in his first term, and now ignoring the U.S. Constitution, which gives Congress the sole authority to impose taxes and tariffs, or just a particular tax on imports of goods and services. He has threatened to impose a 50% tariff on Brazil unless it stops the prosecution of, Bolsonaro. So he's interfering in Brazil's internal affairs. Straight up interference in Brazil's internal affairs. What a schmuck. I can't believe it. Here was Trump violating the rule of law to insist that Brazil, which has adhered to all the strictures of due process in prosecuting Bolsonaro, do the same. Congress has never enacted tariffs as an instrument for inducing countries to obey a president's political dictates, and Trump could cite no law that gave him even a fig leaf for his unconstitutional actions. What Brazil is doing stands in marked contrast to what has happened in the United States. While the legal process has moved slowly but judiciously to hold to account those who had participated in the January 6th insurrection, in fact, I think we move much too slowly to hold them accountable. If we had held them all accountable, including Trump, in 2021 and 2022, there would have been no return to power by Donald Trump. Trump used the president, going on with the article, Trump used the president's pardon power to forgive all who had been duly convicted, even the most violent. Complicity in an attack that left 5 people dead and more than 100 police officers injured was no crime. Like China, Brazil's refused to submit I'm sorry, I got this screwed up. No, I got that screwed up. Hang on a second, let me get back to something screwed me up there. I don't know what it was, but I'm not back to it yet. I guess what happened here. I got to get back to this. And I don't know exactly how. I am already subscribed, so this should not be a problem. Yep. Let's see if I can get back to this. See. Oh, okay. Well, I'm logged in. So I don't know what my problem should be here. But Okay, basically, I won't be able to continue with this because I evidently can't access this again, even though I have an account there. It's just giving me the same stuff. I can't get into where I was before. So I'm going to have to give up on this and stop sharing this. But the basic point is that under the leadership of Lula, Brazil is simply defying the United States and rejecting the tariffs and saying to Trump that if the United States doesn't want to trade with Brazil any longer, then we don't have to trade with Brazil. They will simply find some new markets. So Brazil is turning to Indonesia and to Southeast Asia and to China to increase its trade with them. And they are very interested in Brazil's products. Okay, and actually Brazil was one of those nations that had a trade deficit with the United States. So in cutting off trade with them, the United States is cutting off its nose to spite its face, or cutting off its nose to try to turn the Brazilian government over to Bolsonaro again. I don't believe they're going to succeed, in doing it. I think, in fact, that this has been a boon for Lula and for the people in Brazil in support of democracy there, because the Brazilians are now rallying around, the flag, and Lula is able to bring the forces of nationalism to his side in sustaining the prosecution, against the Bolsonaro forces. I think Bolsonaro is going to jail, and I don't think the United States is going to be able to stop it. Nor do I think the CIA is going to be able to overturn the government, of the Brazilians. This time, this is going to be one big failure for the United States. And one big gain for Brazil, because it will open up new markets in the rest of the world and will become a much more prosperous nation as a result of the fact that it's cutting off its trade with the United States. So that is my view. I think it's also a pretty good summary of what Joe Stiglitz had to say as well. And I'm sorry for the technical glitch, that occurred here. I don't know why that happened, but suddenly I lost access to the article. So we now go on to the final bit for tonight, which is a short piece from Larry Johnson, but a piece pregnant with implications. Okay, Dee, would you like to take it on?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So here we are. I've shared it for you.
12 days. Then what?
And there's a picture of Donald Trump shaking hands with Keir Starmer, whose political career is thankfully now dead.
Mm-hmm.
He is gone from the prime ministership in Great Britain, and his Labour Party has sunk in the latest polls to a level of 15%. That's okay, honey. 15% of support, in the whole country, while the Reform Party of Nigel Farage has recently risen to 34% support. Okay, the 15% support for labor is sinking, but in the latest poll was equivalent to the support that was being given to the new party of Jeremy Corbyn, but that poll was before the declaration of the new party. Okay, it's your party, and the beginning of signups for your party. Your party has now reached 500,000 people signed up. I believe that's more than the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have put together. Anyway, Dee, please go on.
Donald Trump made another move in his feckless game of global checkers today in Scotland, with the announcement that he is giving Russia a new, much shorter deadline, 10 to 12 days from now, to end the war in Ukraine. Trump warned that President Vladimir Putin does not reach a deal by around August 7th to the 9th, the U.S. will impose new sanctions and, quote, severe tariffs on Russia and countries supporting its war effort. Trump's new deadline elicited a collective yawn in Moscow.
Yes.
Yeah. Since the start of the Special Military Operation, SMO, trade between the U.S. and Russia has shrunk dramatically. In 2021, U.S. exports to Russia totaled approximately $6.4 billion, and U.S. imports from Russia totaled about $29.7 billion. This resulted in a U.S. trade deficit with Russia of about $23.3 billion for that year. In 2024, total trade in goods between the United States and Russia declined sharply due to ongoing sanctions, war-related restrictions, and other political measures. U.S. exports to Russia in 2024, approximately 526 million, marking a decrease of over 12% compared to 2023. Major U.S. exports included medical technical equipment, pharmaceuticals, machinery, and some food and chemical products. U.S. imports from Russia in 2024, about 3.0 to 3.27 billion, down more than 34% compared to 2023, and down over 75% from pre-war levels in 2021 and 2022. Key Russian exports to the U.S. were fertilizers, about 1.3 billion, precious metals, about 87 million, and inorganic chemicals, about 183 million. Energy imports have almost entirely ceased. Trump's threat of new sanctions is just a blowhard bloviating. Ending shipments of fertilizers and precious metals is not going to hurt the Russian economy one bit. Thanks to the sanctions Biden levied in 2022, Russia's economy grew to be the fourth largest in the world as measured by purchasing power parity. Western propaganda that the Russian economy is failing, citing certain growth of 1.4%, ignores the fiscal policies that the Russian central bank put in place in 2024 to cool inflation. But these measures were only temporary, with the central bank announcing a 2% cut in interest rates last week. That means that Trump, if he is serious, will impose bone-crushing tariffs on China and India. Both countries appear unfazed by Trump's bullying buster. China, in particular, holds some very strong cards, rare earth minerals desperately needed by the U.S. military-industrial complex. I think this will be another Trump nothing burger. So why did Trump whittle down the deadline? One possible explanation concerns the rapid deterioration of the military situation for Ukraine. Russia is making rapid advances all along a line of contact, and even Ukrainian media and social media outlets were expressing alarm. And that sparked Trump's decision to shorten the time for Russia to agree to a ceasefire. 50 days or 12 days, it does not matter. Trump has no leverage to compel Russia to agree to the ceasefire that the US and Europe wanted to be imposed. Russia is going to continue with its offensive and will take more territory in the coming weeks. Russian troops are pushing north in Zaporizhia, moving south through Sumy and Kharkiv, and advancing to the west, having already taken territory in Dnipropetrovsk.
That is a tongue twister.
Yeah.
Okay, it is Dnipropetrovsk.
Okay.
Okay, it's a tongue twister, no question
Yes.
about it.
Nope.
The other one, okay, is Zaporozhia.
Yes.
A little bit of a tongue twister. By the way, with respect to Kharkiv, got some news the other day that Kharkov, the Russian pronunciation of Kharkiv, has now fallen, to the Russians.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true, but it was a report. If it has fallen, it's fallen rather quickly now. But things are now happening rather quickly in Ukraine. So please go on.
No pressure from Washington or Europe will alter this reality. I discussed this issue as well as developments in West Asia with Nima and Pepe. Following that podcast, I welcomed the judge back from his well-deserved vacation.
And there are links to those videos here as you scroll down on the page. So they're a gateway to those videos. So that was the last of the articles for tonight. You can see that what happens after the 12 days, okay, is probably nothing.
Exactly.
Because the tariffs cannot hurt Russia or China, or India. If anything, they will hurt us. Because the Indians will tell us to go screw ourselves.
Right.
They will trade with who they want to trade with. The Chinese will do the same. And the Chinese will once again clamp down on the trade we have with them. We buy, our rare earth minerals from them for our weapon systems and for our automobiles. And that means that when they shut down that source of supply, those industries here in the United States are going to be severely constricted. We will not be able to maintain any tariffs in the face of China cutting off the rare earths. And by the way, that was one of the major things that we were getting from the Russians also.
Right.
So here we are, we're just cutting off our nose to, spite our faces. Those countries who were willing to send us the rare earths, even though they knew that we were using them to build up, our military might. So now we're being so stupid as to cut off major sources of supply that we have no way of compensating for. I mean, we have lots of rare earths here, but it would take us years to build the processes we need to make use of the raw material we have here. I mean, we're looking at 3 or 4 years, okay, of effort while our military capability stagnates and our automobiles industry stagnates because we don't have access, to the rare earth minerals. So what we have is a situation where Trump is causing self-destruction in our economy because he has this tariff theory. He thinks he can bully everyone into doing what he wants them to do by throwing tariffs on them. And the worst part of this is that he doesn't even have the authority to throw tariffs on them. Only Congress has the authority to set tariffs. And it's only through a delegation of the authority of Congress that Trump is able to issue those executive orders. But the Congress is so bought off that they won't tell Trump, you're out of order, you don't do tariffs, we, the Congress, do tariffs, and we are withdrawing your authority to do these tariffs. And we are telling you that you cannot issue any more tariffs. We are making it illegal for you to issue any tariffs at all, or to change any tariffs at all. Congress needs to do that. And of course, we have people in Congress who are bought off, and that's why we have this situation with Trump, okay, and the tariffs. But that is the most galling thing of all. Trump doesn't have the authority to do what he's doing. He once again is working against the Constitution. He's doing something that is impeachable, and he should be impeached for it. And maybe that's the final word I should say about this for tonight. So we will look at comments to see if there are any more. And if not, and if you don't have any further comments on this, Steve,
No.
we will end the stream here. So let's see. Evelina says, thanks for helping explain the Thai-Cambodia complex rivalry. Yeah, more than a rivalry, it was a frickin' war. Evelina says, vaguely remember these nations related to wartime era, yes, in Vietnam. Yeah, a lot of people were very knowledgeable about these nations during that period of time. But, you know, when the war in Vietnam ended, all familiarity with these nations ended also. So that's the story there. Okay. So, thank you all for coming tonight. Okay, attendance was a little low. I'm sure it'll be higher next time around. My efforts to promote the streams so far have led to a very high number of views for each of the streams, but I did not actually promote the stream for tonight. I'll probably do it again, okay, on Saturday, but so far at least, I have not experienced very much gain in followers or very much gain. I don't think there's been any gain at all in economic activity since I've been spending money to promote these streams on Twitter. So I'm about to conclude that to promote your streams on Twitter is not a constructive activity in the way of promoting one's streams. But I'll give it a few more chances.
Right. And the one thing, too, is, but I don't always remember to say, is to continually tell people to follow,
Yes.
to share and follow.
Yes. Share, like, and subscribe.
Yes, and on X or Twitter, you have to follow, hit the follow.
Yeah. On Twitter, you have to follow. That's right.
Right, so we have to instruct, and that's where I noticed people that do have a large audience, and they use promotion throughout their streams. They keep bringing it up, and I don't do that, and it's something that I have to remember.
Okay, I'll do that too. The next time I promote a stream, I will urge everyone to follow. Please follow. and we'll see if that, creates a better effect.
Right.
But in the meantime, let us say good night. I think this has been a very good and interesting stream, and I'm very happy that we've done it. And thank you
Yes.
for helping me, Dee.
Yes. Thank you for a great show, and thank you everybody for joining us and commenting.
Yes. And
And
we
good.
will see you again for this stream on Saturday. And Dee has some good streams coming up between now and Saturday, I'm sure.
Yes. I don't have the topics yet, but I'll be live Wednesday and Thursday, and I believe Friday as well.
Okay, so there's plenty coming from Dee on Around the World with Dee and Friends. So please look in on her on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And perhaps I'll get some time to look in on her on one of those days as well. I hope so.
Okay. Sounds good. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night. Okay, good night, Dee. And good night, everyone who came tonight. And
Yes,
good
good night.
night, but to Evelina, who we were especially happy to see here tonight. We really missed you. I know this was a result that we had a technical problem on Sunday actually, in streaming to Facebook. So that was due to a technical problem. I hope it will never recur again. So I think you can expect to see me on Saturday on Facebook. So I'll end the stream now. And again, thank you all very much for coming.